Our guest speaker graduated from the United States Air Force Academy in 1995, spent 20 years and 4 months on active duty, and retired from service in 2015. He was deployed 7 times and flew over 800 combat hours throughout Europe, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Currently, he flies a 737 for Delta Airlines. Please welcome Max Morris's father, Lieutenant Colonel Scott Morris.
No pressure, right? Okay. All right, Principal Andrews. All right, to the faculty and staff, and most importantly, to the students here at Brooks Elementary, thank you for inviting me to speak today. We are here today to honor our veterans, to remember their achievements, their courage, their dedication, and especially to say thank you for their sacrifices. Thinking of the heroes who join us today, and those who are only here in spirit, a person cannot help but feel awed by their service. We stand today in the shadows of giants and alongside the family and friends that supported them. As a young boy, Veterans Day was not only a day off from school, but it also meant our small town would have a parade. I enjoyed seeing the high school marching bands, the local cowboys riding their horses, but the best part for me was watching the Shriners. Now, I was too young to know what a Shriner was, or what they did. I just enjoyed seeing the men wearing funny hats, zigzagging go-karts up and down the streets. The craziest thing is, my dad was a veteran, but I was too young to fully understand. All dads went to work in the morning, only my dad left the house wearing a green flight suit and sometimes worked late nights and weekends. As you can see, I followed in my father's footsteps, joined the Air Force myself, earned a history degree, and became a pilot as well. Having a historian mindset, I feel I need to start with a little background information. Veterans Day started an Armistice Day on November 11, 1919, on the first anniversary of the end of World War I, when the treaty was signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Congress then passed a resolution in 1926 to formalize an annual observance, and November 11th became a national holiday in 1938. Veterans Day is a day to recognize all veterans, past and present, regardless of their length of service. The young corporal that did 2 years of mandatory service back in the 50s is just as much a veteran as the Chief Master Sergeant that retired after 35 years. Speaking of keeping track of time, when I started my first deployment as a young lieutenant, I marked each day I was in the Middle East with a tick mark on the brim of my hat. I'm not even sure why I started doing it. It was 1997, it was an easy 60-day deployment to the United Arab Emirates, not too far outside of Abu Dhabi and Dubai. But I'm glad I did that, because I took that same hat on my next deployment, but now it was October 2001, and it was obvious to everyone that we would be spending many more days throughout the Middle East. I kept this hat with me through 6 deployments to the United Arab Emirates, Oman, Jordan, 3 times to Qatar, and another 13-month deployment to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. All in all, I spent almost 3 years of my 20 years in the Air Force waking up to the bright Arabian sun. On day 874, I made the last tick mark on my hat, stepped onto a 747, and started the long journey back to Pensacola, where we lived at the time. And I consider myself lucky. For one, I did come home, and I was virtually injury-free. I came home that last time with a thick bandage on my finger, but it was my own fault. It's pretty hard to qualify for a Purple Heart when you're packing your gear and you accidentally grab your razor by the wrong end. I brought that hat with me here today because I want to show you something other than the tick marks. It's pretty hard to see, but trust me, it's there. I dropped it. It's right here. Just beside the edge is a faded pair of lipstick marks where my wife Marcy kissed my hat the day I left, and I never washed it off. Every time I put on this hat, I wanted to see a reminder of what I left behind and what to look forward to once I got back home. No doubt, it's hard on the veterans to deploy. The job is hard, hours are long, it's hot, the food is horrible, and the living conditions are even worse. But I think it's just as hard for the families that are stuck at home. I know how hard it is today for Marcy to put up with the every day-to-day stuff for Max and I. And I can only imagine how tough it was when I was gone so many times. And for that, I thank him.
Love you, Dad.
Thanks. All right, I said I was a history major, not a math major. But with the U.S. population at around 330 million, less than 1% is currently serving on active duty in the military. When you factor in the reserves and National Guard troops, that percentage climbs to a little over 2%. And in 2018, the Veterans Administration estimated there were over 18.2 million veterans currently living in the United States. So all in all, just under 5.5% of the U.S. total population will attain veteran status. Those are pretty small numbers. So what does it take these days for a young man or woman to volunteer and join the services? For me, it was an internal feeling that I wanted to help people, and I found it rewarding to be a part of a team that worked for the greater good. Although I was a decent tennis player in high school, I was always better at doubles rather than singles, and I got paired with the perfect partner. My weaknesses were his strengths and vice versa, and we went undefeated that year and won the district championship. That's the best way I can describe what it's like to be in the military. It's like being on the best team you could ever imagine. Here you have this diverse group of people from all walks of life, each with different sets of skills and specialties. And when you put this juggernaut of a team together and you give them the right tools and directions, there's really nothing that that team can't overcome and accomplish. And I was on some great teams in my 20 years. Despite the harsh realities of the job, American veterans continue to operate 24/7 around the world and perform their missions with excellence and precision. When their mission is complete, veterans continue to make lasting impressions on their communities and have risen to the highest positions imaginable. Jimmy Carter, from right here in Georgia, graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 1946, served as a submarine officer for 7 years. After his service was complete, he then went on to be a Georgia State Senator, governor, and was elected the 39th President of the United States. And something I did not know until just recently, in 2002, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. So you can see there really isn't a job too big or too tough or challenging for an American veteran. The toughest job veterans have faced started over 18 years ago and unfortunately has not ended. But since then, our society has developed a very military-friendly and gracious personality. On more than one occasion, I've had a meal with coworkers in uniform, and when we ask for our check, only to be told, it's been taken care of. All I could say was thank you and leave a very, very nice tip. And after that, when people would come up to me and say, thank you for your service, I'll be honest, it felt weird to me. I couldn't quite understand why people were coming up to me thanking me for a job I volunteered to do, and I really enjoy doing that every day. But as I've grown a little older and much, much thicker, I now understand. Those people felt the same way towards me as I felt about people I admire. I try to thank every police officer, firefighter, and first responder I see. I thank them for their willingness to forsake their own personal safety and charge into the face of dangers to help people, to serve their community. And I also think the greatest heroes of all serving their community, school teachers and administrators. Because if anyone deserves combat pay for dealing with parents like us, it's these guys. Am I right?
Amen.
All right, with that, I will close by saying thank you to the Brooks Elementary staff for inviting me today. Thank you to all veterans, past and present. Thank you to anyone supporting veterans' causes and charities. Thank you to all first responders and public servants. And a special thank you to any of these students who that someday may decide to join the 5.5% and earn veteran status themselves. Thank you all.